Hey everybody, welcome to Icewater Yoga. My name is Joe. Today's class is a very physical breathing class. So what I mean by that is what I really want to do is do what we often don't do in flow yoga classes, which is spend time in poses. And as opposed to thinking so much about the pose itself, think about the breath that's going on in the pose. We all the time in flow, we go into one pose and then out, one breath, one movement, and that's awesome. But we never spend time in the pose and really learn about it and explore it as much. So every pose that we do today is going to be about exploring breath. So before we even get into the practice itself, I want to just give you the tools to breathe properly in your yoga practice. So what we're going to practice just very briefly is called Ujjayi breathing, also known as victorious breath. So with a slight narrowing at the base of the throat, we're able to control the intake and exhaling of oxygen, which slows down our system, which gives us more control over not only our breath, but our focus. And it's a really nice way to build heat in poses and stay really locked into the pose. It's a similar feeling as if you were fogging up a mirror through your mouth. So just like this, that throat is slightly narrowed in that breathing. So what you're able to do is build warmer air that is fogging up the mirror in front of you. So we'll practice a few times just exhaling through the mouth, just like that, like you're fogging up a mirror. Inhale fully, and then exhale, fog up the mirror. Really nice. Inhale through the nose. Now let's fog up the mirror through our nose. So inhale through the nose, and then exhale out the nose as if you were fogging up a mirror. Now try to inhale that way. Exhale through the nose. Inhale through the nose. Your breath becomes audible. So you'll notice the breath becomes more drawn out, it's longer, and you have to stay focused to do it. You can't do that type of breathing naturally without actually actively doing it, and that's what we're going to do today. Okay, so the first pose of the day is going to be chair pose, all right? So bring the legs towards one another, zip the legs together. We'll take the hands to the hips for this one. Hips draw back, and we'll sit down in our chair pose just to start up. Really active, like I said, this is an active class, but we're only thinking about the breathing, or mostly thinking about the breathing. So let's take 5 deep Ujjayi breaths. And if you don't have the Ujjayi breath, just straight regular breathing, slow through the nose is going to work great, just fine. That's 1 for me. Okay, that was 5 breaths for me. Coming out of the pose, stand up. Let's take high lunge. All right, so this is less about high instruction, more about just focusing on the breath. And I want to speak less to give you space to explore the breathing. All right, so we'll take feet hips width distance, and then a big bend in the back knee. We again don't want to be so deep in the pose. We just want to find a lunge position. We're obviously not super warmed up right now. So something that feels like it's active, but you can sustain it for, again, 5 breaths. So we're on the left side. If you want to intensify, you can take arms overhead, hip points lifting, low ribs knit in, engage your core, tailbone straight down. We're breathing here for 5. 4. 3. 2. last one. Exhale, hands to hips, step the back foot forward. We'll take the other side. Left leg steps back. Again, comfortable but physically engaging distance. All right. Big bend in the back knee, lift the hip points, sink into the front knee. Only so much that you can sustain the pose for 5 breaths, but feeling the pose. We want to feel the pose evolve as we continue to breathe through it. Arms overhead is optional. I'm not going to speak for these 5 breaths. So let's take full 5 deep breaths. Okay, hands come back to the hips. Step it forward to the front of your space. You're probably noticing that you don't need to move so much to really start building some warmth in the low body. All right, next step, chair at the wall. So find a wall space near you. If you don't have one, just regular chair pose, our first pose of the class is fine. Otherwise, bring your knees over your ankles, sit your back against the wall, so pressing firmly, elbows, shoulders, everything against the wall, pressing firmly into the feet to stay engaged in the wall, okay? So this is all in the lower body. Again, if you can get knees in line with hips, beautiful. You can also have the hips higher relative to the knees, no problem. We just want to find a place where we can breathe, that we know that we can hold for 5 deep breaths. All right, so let's explore this for 5. Last breath here. Hands to the wall to press yourself away. Okay. So now we'll introduce a new concept in our breathing. So we've just been breathing at any length of time, in through the nose, out through the nose. Now we'll introduce the idea of equal breathing on either side. So we're going to do it in plank pose. And the challenge here is to try to get about a 4 to 5 second inhale and a 4 to 5 second exhale. Ideally, exactly the same number. So if you're going for 4, do 4. If you're going for 5, do 5. If you try 4 and it feels like it's too hard to do that, go to 3 or 2. That's okay. The speed isn't as important as knowing what we're doing. So let's have a pure intention here into our plank pose. I'm going to go for 4 breaths. So hopefully that feels like average. Once you've done your 5 breaths, take it to the knees and then we'll finish up together. Okay. So take it to the plank pose, biceps spinning forward, shoulders right over wrists, legs strong and engaged, inner seams of the legs together. Let's take the same length of breath on all of these breaths, on the inhales and exhales. So I'm going to go for 4 second inhales, 4 second exhales. From here, take it to the knees, sit it back, okay? How did that feel? Really feels kind of nice to be able to control the breath like that. You kind of get lost in the flow of the breathing. All right, let's continue to add some new poses, okay? From here, we're gonna work on not only breathing in even pattern, so the same length of inhale and exhale, but also finding a full inhale. So fill the lungs at the top of the breath, and then emptying the lungs completely. So on the 4th second, if we're going for a 4-second inhale, that last second, the lungs are completely filled. And then our exhale, that last second, the lungs are completely empty. So let's try to do that. Our next pose is horse pose. So we're not gonna come so deep into it, but our knees stay right over our ankles. Our toes can be facing slightly forward, and you can literally be here. We just want the knees right over the ankles. Okay, so find a depth that feels productive. We're gonna take 5 breaths. Again, to intensify, arms can come overhead. And again, here's where we explore full inhales, all right? Same length of breath. I'm gonna take 4-second inhales and exhales. All right, fill up, first breath. Really nice. From here, extend through both knees. We're going to take warrior 1.5. So I'll explain what that means. All right, so now we're going to stay on the same breathing pattern. We're not going to add anything else in the breathing until towards the end of class. Our next step is to continue this breathing technique in some new poses. So we'll take the heel to heel alignment. So our back foot, the outside edge is pressing into the mat. The right hip is pressing towards the front right of your mat, and this left hip is trying to square back. Okay, left knee right over left ankle, arms rise, chest and hips facing the front right corner of the mat. Press away through the right foot, lift through the hip points. Find your gaze. We're here for 5 deep breaths. Find your own count, filling at the top, emptying completely at the end. Okay, hands to hips, straighten through the front knee. We'll take the other side. Noticing the whole time when your mind starts to shift and go to other things and think about anything other than your breathing and your pose, how the breath pattern starts to get pretty random and we don't actually have control over it, and truly we don't have full control of the practice. Okay, so warrior 1.5 on the other side, heel to heel alignment, hips drawing towards the front left corner of your mat this time. Hands can be at hips or overhead, pressing away through the left foot, hip points lifting. 5 breaths. Okay, last exhale, straighten through the front knee. Let's take it to the other side. We're going to take warrior 3 pose. And we're not going to take the full pose per se. We're going to take a really high variation of the pose. So everybody's hands are at their hips for this one. Left foot planted directly underneath your left hip. Come out to the ball of the back foot. Again, exploring deep breaths for 5 full breaths. Lift through the chest, find a back bend in the upper back, and then hinge forward only slightly. Only a place you can be for these 5 deep breaths. And you can begin when you find the top of the pose. Last one here. Lift through the chest, step the right foot down. Let's take the other side. Right foot steps down. Right ankle right underneath your right hip. Step the left foot back. Stay lifted in the chest. Stay vertical as much as you can in this pose. Exploring the breath within physical sensation. So let's take 5 deep breaths here. Gently step the left foot down. All right, let's take it into the upper body here. We've been a lot in the legs. So next pose we're going to take is side plank. And so to set this pose up, really all we want is to make sure that our left shoulder to our hand, there's a downward angle there. All right, so as opposed to having shoulder right on top and right above the wrist, we want the wrist just slightly in front of the shoulder. All right, so we can just come right into the pose, setting up the hand position, rocking onto the outside edges of the feet. You can take left knee to the mat. That's a great starting point with right arm overhead or at the hip. You can take the right foot in front, left leg back. You can take one foot in front of the other or stack the feet. Wherever you are, we're taking 5 deep breaths. Okay, from here, coming down, both knees to the mat, we'll take the other side. All right, so again, physically intense, voice crack, physically intense, but exploring breath more than our physicality. Okay, so from here, find that downward angle from the shoulder to the wrist. Find any leg position, anything, hand at the hip or hand overhead. Find a place where you can be here for 5 deep breaths. Gaze can be to the floor, out to the side, or overhead. Really nice. From here, come to the knees. All right, and we're going to take dolphin pose. Okay, so we have still about another 10 or 12 more minutes. You'll notice the practice is really kind of flying by because we're so in the moment. Let's stay in that moment. Let's stay in the breath. Okay, so from here, dolphin pose, palms come to the ground as well as the forearms. Step it back to forearm plank. And then from here, walk the feet in towards you as close as you can get them to the elbows. Again, we're holding for 5 deep breaths. We're not worried about holding a crazy deep pose here. So just find your place and let's begin breathing. From here, please walk it to forearm plank. Always an option to take it to the knees or just rest. 5 deep breaths, please. From here, drop to the knees, thighs, hips. Lift the chest through the arms for Sphinx pose. 5 deep breaths, lifting chest through the upper arms, dragging the elbows energetically back towards you. From here, hands come out overhead, extend the elbows, and then roll your chest onto the mat. Hands come underneath elbows, so draw them back towards you, elbows towards one another. From here, we're going to take Cobra, option to lift the legs. So a 5 breath Cobra. Lift the feet if you'd like, lift the chest. There's no weight in the hands. Let the hands hover. 5 deep breaths. Filling and emptying the lungs. Exhale, release hands to the mat. From here, we're coming to upward facing dog. So hands will be directly underneath the elbows, which will be directly underneath the shoulders. Lift through the chest, press it up. We're here for 5 breaths. Engage your quads so the kneecaps are lifting. Lift the chest through the arms, just like we had in that Sphinx pose. 5 deep breaths. Exhale, press it back. Downward facing dog, 5 deep breaths. Hips lifting, heels drawing towards the mat. From here, back to plank pose. We've been here before. 5 deep breaths. From here, please drop it to the knees. Step the knees forward towards you. We're going to take camel pose, okay? So I kind of alluded to this at the beginning of class. We're going to add just one little piece to this pose as an option. So this is not at all mandatory. Really nothing I've said today is mandatory. But an option is to just briefly retain the breath after a full inhale in this camel pose. Okay, so we're going to fill the lungs up with air and then just hold that breath in for a count of 2. And then we exhale again the same length as our inhale. Okay, something to play with. So we tuck the toes under, hands come to the low back, elbows face directly back behind you. Press the tailbone down so we create space in the low back. And then we lift through the chest, chin towards chest. So feel this back bend as you lift up in the chest and then gently back. 5 deep breaths, optional holding at the top. To come out of the pose, lift through the chest, sit back onto the heels. Okay. 5 deep breaths, toes tucked under, okay? Only sitting back on the heels so much that you feel a stretch that you can breathe through for 5 breaths. You can keep the hands on the mat or sit directly on the heels, which is a little bit more intense, okay? Making sure every toe is getting a nice stretch. Let's stay here for 5 deep breaths, option to hold at the top. Really nice. Rock it forward, probably pretty intense for the toes. Cross the legs in front of you, roll it all the way down onto your back. Last few poses here. We'll take one bridge pose, heels in towards you, knees right over ankles. Press the triceps into the mat, lift up, hips are high, shoulders and heels bearing most of this pose, no weight in the neck. 5 deep breaths, option to hold at the top. From here, roll it down 1 vertebrae at a time. Draw the knees into the chest. Exhale all the air. Inhale, let the knees draw slightly away from you as you breathe in for a count of 4. And exhale for 4, drawing the knees into the chest. Continue just like that for 5 breaths. From here, release the knees. Roll it all the way up to sitting. Okay. So our last breathing exercise of the day. We've practiced physically. We've engaged our breath the whole time. So at the end of class here, just want to introduce the final concept of our whole breathing practice that we've been practicing today. We practice holding at the top of the inhale. Now we're going to practice holding at the bottom of the exhale. So the goal here is to inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 4, and hold for 2. All right, so I'll demonstrate. I'll do it with you. I won't be able to count while we do this, but just go by the sound of my breathing or the lack of breathing when I'm retaining the breath. And if this ever makes you feel lightheaded, pause, stop, don't do it. But it's a really nice way to close practice. So we'll take 5 deep breaths, just like this. Inhaling first. Holding at the top. And exhale. Completely holding at the bottom. Inhale for 4. Hold. Exhale for 4. Hold. Continue. Take your eyes open if you close them. Just taking a moment to honor your practice, eyes closed or open. Okay, that's it. You can stay here in seated meditation. You're very well prepared for it. Otherwise, namaste.